I love the smell of, cutting fluid and things like that. Like I walk on the floor and I'm just like, you're making money, right? The spindles are turning, the chips are flying. Right. That's a good thing. Right?
Whole bank of green lights out there, and you're like, that's a good thing.
That's right.
It's not just another golf outing, it's golf for manufacturing. Join us on Monday, August 19th at Glen Flora Country Club in Waukegan, Illinois for Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs annual Golf for Manufacturing event. All proceeds go towards supporting NBT programs such as summer manufacturing camps, grants, and scholarships. Reserve your spot today by visiting fmamfg.org/golf-for-MFG.
Welcome to the Fabricator Podcast. We're recording this live from FABTECH Canada. And as part of this show, we have a real live Canadian. Congratulations, Joe.
I was born here.
There you go. That's awesome.
The highest accomplishment I've done so far.
This is my coworker, Joe Thompson of Canadian Metalworking. How are you today, Joe?
I am doing extremely well.
That's good. We're at FABTECH Canada. We wanted to come get some stories north of the border and share it with our audience. We have I use the term exciting. There are moments of hilarity, maybe, but we had a really good conversation with Diane Reko of Reko International, also of Concorde Precision Machining, and she had some great conversation about her time in the family business and being a manufacturer in a very different environment than her dad was in when he started the business. So I think you'll look forward to it. As we talk about how times have changed, next year represents the 120th anniversary of Canadian Metalworking. Joe, how long have you been with the publication?
Not that long.
Are we including CIM in this? Or?
Sure.
So I started covering the manufacturing sector in Canada 22 years ago.
Oh, wow. Cheers. And Canadian Metalworking became part of the FMA family in 2016. 2016. And it represents our only publication where we actively cover the machining, metalworking side of things.
Cover machining and tooling and software, all wrapped around subtractive machining, and we also cover the additive side as well.
Yeah. So you've made comments numerous times before, like what it means to be kind of the guardian of a brand with such longevity in the marketplace.
It's a unique thing to be the editor of a publication that is over a century old.
Yeah.
Very few exist in this country anymore. I would say less than 10. So it's extremely important, and we're going to be teasing our 120th anniversary, which is next year, all throughout the end of this year. Look for it at IMTS, and then look for things throughout 2025.
Yeah. The magazine started out as?
The original name of the magazine was Canadian Manufacturing and Machinery News. It was a McLean Hunter publication, a company that it outlasted.
I think people with any knowledge of publishing know about McLean. Yeah.
And the very first issues that I looked at were extremely interesting because it was basically a how-to guide on making artillery shells. And that issue was from 1915.
Wow. So it's kind of like a Reddit board that was printed back in the day.
That's right. I don't think I would be allowed to run a similar article in the pages of Canadian Metalworking.
I know somebody might be able to make that happen. Maybe we'll do it a special issue, available only to podcast listeners.
Do you have those original magazines archived?
The University of Toronto has done a really great job on archiving some of the early stuff, and I'm in the process of getting all 12 issues from 1905 sent to me, and it's going to be bound as a hardcover book, so we'll be able to have it at trade shows and take it around with us to show people like literally what we were covering in 1905. And some of it is very interesting, like advice to electrify your shop. Add electricity, everybody. If you don't have that now.
That new electricity technology. Yeah.
Electrification's here to stay, from what I'm told. Although steam power is pretty cool.
And it'll be digital. It'll be
Digital steampunk.
Wireless energy will be the next once we get there.
Like wireless toilets. Whatever.
So wait a minute. You said something about the first issue said volume 1, but it also on the back said volume 17.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's obviously this is murky history.
Yeah.
That none of these things exist prior to 1905, so it could have had an even earlier incarnation.
Gotcha. All right, we'll get Dan on.
If anyone out there read those original issues,
right.
please let us know, and we're glad to send you a T-shirt.
I'm sure they're listening.
I'm sure there's
to
people in your
podcasts.
home that can help you put on that T-shirt.
If you are 150 years old, please reach out to us.
Yep.
Yes, you might be on a future edition of the Fabricator podcast.
We'll send you a bolo tie to commemorate the 120-year anniversary.
We're testing swag, so if there's interest in Fabricator podcast branded bolo ties, or maybe even Canadian Metalworking branded
and
bolo
of course,
ties, let us know.
For Canada, we do have swag pucks.
Oh yeah, we do.
Swag pucks. I had to think
man.
for a half second what we were referencing. Yes.
We got a bunch.
Throw
of
them at your
everywhere.
child and don't hurt them.
Yeah.
Does that happen? Has anyone ever thrown a hockey puck at you?
They shot one at me before.
Okay, yeah.
And on purpose. Not. This was not during gameplay. It was just, I think, a little stick work and.
I thought you were just like walking down the street and there was like a drive-by pucking.
No.
Yeah. No, I think that's when you hear 4 in Canada, you're having a hockey puck come toward you.
Yeah, gotcha.
All right. I've insulted myself enough. So enjoy this episode of the Fabricator podcast. Diane Reko, you'll enjoy it. Thanks.
Don't miss your chance to see the latest in metal fabrication solutions at the Fabricators Technology Summit, August 20th and 21st in the Chicagoland area. This exclusive event, hosted by FMA, offers opportunities to visit local shops, see the latest equipment in action, and network with others in the industry. Visit fmamfg.org for more information. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back to the Fabricator podcast. We're here at FABTECH Canada 2024. Thanks for joining us. Today, we got a really exciting guest. That's a big modifier, Diane. Exciting. So you're going to live up to the bill. To my left is Joe Thompson, editor of Canadian Metalworking. The magazine brand has been around for 119 years.
119 years.
How long have you been with the magazine, Joe?
Less than that.
Okay, there you go.
Feels like 119.
So that's part of the FMA brand, and we wanted to branch out and have our friend from Canadian Metalworking join us on this conversation because it's one that's probably closer to his field of focus than us with the Fabricator. So Diane Reko is with Reko International, family-owned business. Are you the second generation?
I am the second generation. Yeah. So
we're going to learn about their business and some of our thoughts about manufacturing in Canada because in a speech that you made at a CMTS within 2 years ago.
Last year.
Yeah, last year. I brought home some points about the importance of having that manufacturing base here in Canada. I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. So would you mind starting off by telling us about the company and your involvement?
Sure. We're a couple 100-person company. We've got a great team, and what we have are 2 amazing divisions. One where we design and build automation equipment, predominantly for a few different industries. Automotive, right now we're branching into off-site construction and modular construction as well. And We've done some work in aerospace, and also mining is a new endeavor that we're working on right now. And the other side of our business is machining. So we machine great big crankcases, mostly right now for power generation. Imagine it's a pretty busy thing to make sure that all these data centers keep up and running.
Right.
That's Concorde.
That's our Concorde division. Yes. So that's pretty well us. We've been around for getting close to 50 years.
Wow.
We're a few years from that. We're in our late 40s. I lost count somehow. But we've got a really great team. Been around for a long time. Started as a mold shop back in the day, but we're not doing that anymore. So. It's exciting. We've been exporters, so most of our customers are on the U.S. side of the border, and we've built some really interesting projects over the years.
When were you pulled into the family company?
Right after I graduated. Yeah,
Okay.
It wasn't really where I expected to be, but it seemed like a good idea at the time, and I just stayed. So yeah.
So
It's
your
been a long
dad,
time.
Steve, founded the company.
He did.
And was he a tool and die maker?
He was. That was his trade. Yeah.
that's
He
how
originally was a
that's why it
machinist,
started.
but yeah, he became a tool and die maker when he came to Canada, and yeah, that was the origin. So.
Yeah, and he worked for a company that had a kind of a reputation of developing machinist talents when he first got there.
He did. He had a lot of great experiences before he started his own company, and there was a company in Windsor called International Tools that literally
Yeah.
was international. It had immigrants from all around the world,
Yeah.
and they became very big mold makers back in the day.
Yeah.
the
I mean, it's got to
60s.
be pretty proud to be part of that industry where it's such a history of it in the
Yeah.
Windsor community.
Yeah. There was a really long and exciting history in Windsor with respect to technology.
Yeah.
Now you see that we've become sort of an automation cluster too. There's an
Mhm.
awful lot of automation companies in the area as well. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
In terms of automation, is it mainly automotive focused, or
That's
you
been
see-
the majority of our work,
Okay.
but as I say, we've started to do some other. We've done a couple projects for aerospace and defense, and are working currently on a new innovation for the mining industry, for exploratory mining, which will really help with health and safety. The prototype should be ready soon.
Oh, wow.
And and we're also now working hopefully in the offsite and modular construction space. So
Yeah.
we're
Now, when
bidding
you
on some
say
projects there.
automation, I mean, that's obviously been a buzzword for the last,
Yeah.
10 years, but the last
Mhm.
couple of years has certainly seen an uptick in that.
Yes.
Has that come into the business, or are you above that kind of the trendiness of automating, say, some of the equipment that we see here, or automating a cell? You're talking about automation beyond that?
Yeah, like we build equipment, design it, build it, run it off, install it on our customer's floor. So, yeah, it's we had because my father was originally a machinist. He had designs for machines, for milling machines, and so we actually designed and built those in the company, and that kind of became our automation vision. We had people who had expertise in controls and construction and on machining, obviously. So we've sort of been doing that for a very long time. And now it's a matter of trying to see who needs us most, right? Where's the demand? Who's got the shortage of skilled labor where they can't get it done because they don't have anyone to do it. That's where we can step in and help. So
Right.
And going vertically has helped you, obviously.
It has.
When there's a peak, particularly in automotive, you'll see. Well, you don't see the peak, but you see the trough a lot.
Yeah. We're seeing that right now. I would say locally, and a lot of layoffs, which I will be mentioning when I'm on the panel a little bit later. But yeah, the automotive industry has always been cyclical. That's really nothing new. But yeah, we wanted to be able to offer what we can do to a lot of other industries as well, because we know they need it. For example, this mining application that we're working on has not been done yet. It's been something that they've needed for a long time. And so
Oh, wow.
we're really excited. We've been working with a partner who has a drilling service, and we think we are going to hit this one out of the park. So it's exciting. Yeah.
So in a prior podcast, you made reference to an example of some of the automation. It involved equipment that applies holes to bumpers
Mhm.
for automotive, but yet when you think automotive, you think high volume, but this is not necessarily the case. There's a lot of variability in the bumper that's
Exactly.
being used in this one piece of automation. Can you explain that a little bit?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of the stumbling blocks for taking automation from the automotive industry, where historically the volumes have been quite high for
Right.
vehicles, I think like your Ford F-150 or whatever, to other industries, is that they don't have the same volumes. And so to try and get the return on investment for people is a little bit tricky. So we've worked really hard to try and come up with flexible solutions. And even for the off-site construction space, what we're looking at is something that allows you to do a wall of certain dimensions, but then slightly larger or slightly smaller. So you've got a variety of products that you can produce on that same equipment.
Yeah.
Obviously, it makes more sense in this world where, a little bit of customization is often needed.
Right. Does it involve a lot of robots?
Yes, we do quite a bit of work with robots, but also some without.
Okay.
We're just using basic pneumatics and physics and things that are a little
Yeah.
bit beyond me, to be
Right.
honest.
I think when
but,
people think automation, they think robot.
yeah.
They almost equivocate the two. And so
It's not
automation
always.
can be many things.
You're right. Yeah. So even software, right? I mean, if you look at it in the offices, for example, there are ways to automate processes of paying your bills or collecting your cash that really don't involve a robot.
Or entering
It's
a
more
data
software.
offset once and having it automatically go
Exactly.
through, or tolerances and enter them one time and not transposing numbers on a control panel somewhere so far down the line that value has already been put into the part.
Exactly.
Do you have software engineers on staff?
Yeah, indirectly. I don't know that they necessarily carry that
the title,
title. They're controls engineers, but they're very good with software.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that a growing part of your business? Is that automation space?
Definitely. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of interest and doing a lot of bidding. And right now in the automotive space, it seems like a lot of projects are kind of on hold. But in the other spaces, people are ready to go and need the help. So
Now, does Concorde feed Reko as well? Is like Reko a customer of Concorde, or
not
is it?
so much. Actually, our automation division has designed automation equipment for Concorde to help them be more
So
efficient
it's the other way around.
in their machining. And occasionally, Concorde does a little bit of machining for them, but quite honestly, they're pretty busy right now, so they don't really have time to do a lot of it.
So I was doing a little bit of reading, and there are 2 machining centers at Concorde that your dad designed and built, and their names are Bear and Bull, but in Hungarian. So what is the Hungarian name for the bear and the bull?
Oh, you're testing me now. So the Hungarian word for bear is medve, and the Hungarian word for bull is bika. So
wow.
They're pretty easy to say, but
So are the names actually on the machines?
I think they still are.
I think, it reminds me of just having like something in your house you refer to by a proper noun. And it's more impressive if it's over 40 feet, 40 feet tall. So what was it like coming up as someone in a manufacturing family, but not someone who actually kind of studied it? And you're around it, but you weren't in it right away. How did that transition go?
Yeah, it was interesting. I guess I've always felt comfortable in the plant because my dad started with a very small facility, and my sisters and my mom and I used to go and clean the toilets on the weekends and, do whatever needed to be done. I was doing payroll from home when I was young, sort of manually. But when I got more involved and needed to go out onto the shop floor, it was really intimidating for me because I have a business degree and really was kind of uncomfortable around the machines. I kind of wish that my father had forced me to learn to be a machinist or, do some assembly on the floor or something. But I've learned that over the years, walking around talking to people and getting a little bit more comfortable with it. I can give the tour to the non-technical people who visit us, like bankers and accountants, quite well. But yeah, I'm definitely relying on those really great experts that we have in the business to do that stuff. But it's funny, I love the smell of, cutting fluid and things like that. Like I walk on the floor and I'm just like, cause, you're making money, right? The spindles are turning, the chips are flying.
Right.
That's a good thing. Right?
Whole bank of green lights out there, and you're like, that's a good thing.
That's right. Yeah. But
it can be intimidating. I was talking with my wife over the weekend. She, my father-in-law, her dad, on the gas station on the side, he actually plowed driveways and apartment complexes. And he had my wife and her friend, 9 years old, who had the deal of going to shovel sidewalks at this one apartment complex while he kind of went off and did some other things. Well, he forgot them. It's sub 30 degrees. She had days before cell phone. She had to go to a neighbor's house and call. It's like, Dad, hello. He's like, oh yeah. Point being is that sometimes I think you're thrown into things without too much guidance. It can be very intimidating.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting having a business background in manufacturing, because I think a lot of the times where manufacturing owners and managers fail is on the business side. They know how to make a part. They know how to run a machine. They probably even know how to quote pretty well, but it's the next level up of thinking of it not as a manufacturer but as a business. And there's still challenges there, obviously, but you have people that will work for you on the manufacturing floor to solve problems, but you're the one that has to solve the problems in the business.
Yes.
So
yes. And I have a team with that too. But
how does that part of your background help? You know, you've grown this business kind of to the next level.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah. I really do have a great team there too. But you're right. It's funny how perspective can be different. You know, I had a conversation with one of our assembly guys in the automation space a couple weeks ago, and he was very excited about how they had to readjust something and debug it. But in my head, I'm thinking, but that cost us money, right? Like that should have been designed to go in the right location the first time. So, but to him, that's like a sense of pride, and you know, you solved a problem, and that's great. And I want him to continue doing that. But my business mind is also saying, okay, how can we do this better? So there's a lot of areas where there's a little bit of conflict sometimes between what's the business decision versus what's the technical decision, or how do you balance making something perfect, you know, and you know, and then what the customer actually wants and what they're willing to pay for it too.
And how did you get past that stage of, or if you had that stage of, well, what would Dad have done?
Many times,
right?
Yeah, I asked myself a lot, quite a lot actually. And I even had and I've told this story before, but I had one employee early on after I took over, and we had gone through a big restructuring at that point in time, and he looked at me and he said, "Your father would have never done this." And I walked away and wanted to cry, but I didn't. I held it together. But he stayed with us for a long time. He just retired a couple of years ago. So I don't think he meant it in an insulting way.
Right.
I think he just meant it that you made a decision
You're
that
forming your own
came
path
from
here.
your perspective, exactly, and what you see as the right thing for the business at this time. And your father might not have made the same one. So he didn't mean it the way I took it, but
yeah, I mean, but I hear that. I take it the way you took it. I mean, that's a statement.
Yeah, it was a rough day. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
And you know, it's interesting. I talked to a lot of manufacturers. So Reko's your last name. We joked earlier. It's also the company name. So is there more pressure? Because it's a failure of the business, but it's also a personal failure if things go wrong.
For sure, yeah. You know, my family is still very invested, if you will, from a financial perspective. But I also bear the burden of all these people, many of whom have kind of grown up with me in the business too, right? Who were there when I started. And the sense of responsibility to them and their families and our community and everything. So yeah, it's quite a weight to bear.
Right.
And I don't know tons of CEOs. I know others that I've spoken to in the past have also had similar senses of responsibility. I remember one saying to me one time, you know, every time an employee would come to me and say, "Guess what we're expecting?" I would think, "Oh no, one more mouth to feed," you know?
Oh, wow.
You know, that's extremely common in Windsor area shops because Windsor is a manufacturing town. There's no oil and gas there. There's no forestry. There's no trees to cut down. It's a manufacturing town.
It is.
Especially, I mean, you're out in Lakeshore, which is an even tighter knit.
It is, group. Yeah. So it's, you know, there is definitely a sense of pride of being part of that and part of that ecosystem, but also a sense of responsibility that comes with that.
But you've also stepped forward, kind of voicing opinions about having a strong manufacturing base in Canada. Yeah. That's an added. I don't know if you wear. I don't think you wear the weight of the whole country, but I think.
Let's do that to her.
But I think it's important, you know, that people speak up. What made you want to, like, maybe speak in front of CMTS and kind of be a face for that?
Yeah, I think my father inspired me with that when I was very young, because I spoke to him about learning one day about how Canada's economy was changing from a manufacturing to a service economy, and I thought his head was going to explode. He was
and
like,
it still
what?
is. It still is on that transition.
I know, and he was very upset about that. And so we talked about it a lot. I remember that being one of the very early serious conversations I had with my dad.
Wow.
You know, we used to make puzzles together and do a lot of things, but that was like one of those, you know, you're becoming an adult, kind of that conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's really stuck with me too, right? I mean, it's been heartbreaking to see through the automotive cycles, people get laid off, or, you know, we've had it in our own business, right? Running into those people in the grocery store is uncomfortable, right?
And in the case of Windsor, very well-known businesses have closed in the last couple of years.
Exactly.
That I just heard about recently and was just completely shocked.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to do something to make sure that we're still here in 50 more years, and it's important because I look at it as I have 3 daughters, and I don't want them to grow up feeling that unless they marry someone who's wealthy, they won't be able to survive, right? I want them to have a sense of their own ownership and their own independence, if you will.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing with Canada and our manufacturing base, is that if we give it off to somebody else and just say, I'll be reliant on you to supply me with what we need, what are we going to do if they suddenly are not our friends anymore, or they need it for themselves and they decide they don't want to trade with us, or pick any other reason, really? Then what are we going to do, all right?
Yeah.
We won't have our own ability to sustain ourselves.
I think the manufacturing sector in this country kind of fell into its own kind of pit by being so dependent on automotive, especially in this province, especially in this corridor. Out west we'll disagree, but they're hooked to oil and gas. But that leaves us vulnerable, and that a company like yours, who can touch a lot of different industries like mining, aerospace never seems to have a dip. They have problems, like our friends at Boeing.
Yeah, their dips are another concern.
That's right. But how in this modern world, so post-recession, post-COVID, we're in a new world now for manufacturing. How do you at Reko kind of ride the waves of this?
We're always looking for where we can add most value, right? Where can we be most helpful? I mean, recently, the headlines have been full of our housing shortage in this country and how we just can't keep up, right? And, I've joked with builders that I've met, like, come on, build them a little faster, but the reality is they're not really using any automation. They're all still doing it the old way with dependency on people who are skilled, who we're not producing very many of those anymore. And so that's where I think we can really help, is by helping to automate some of those processes and giving them sub-assemblies and things like we do in manufacturing to make it more efficient to build a vehicle can also help to build a home faster, right? Because we have to get that volume up.
So are you kind of leaning into a market that's somewhat developed, or are you kind of on the cutting edge of helping to develop it?
A bit, yeah. We've got some new members to our team who have a lot more exposure to that market recently, and so we're kind of working together with where they know there are opportunities and some need with some companies, and our skills that we already have, and being able to blend them together so that we can go out there and do that. So.
Well, it's kind of exciting. You're almost not only diversifying the business, but kind of tackling an issue that's out there, and not a whole lot of answers being put forth.
Yeah, I think that's something we can all get behind as a team. It's frustrating for me to think about the fact that we have a lot of youth within our organization, and that some of them still can't afford a home. You know, we've seen incredible price appreciation in the Windsor area, and it's at a point now where it's very difficult for someone to
imagine running a manufacturing facility in this area. I can't. And having that.
I can't even fathom that.
I've spoken to a couple recently here in the GTA, and they're like, they have people riding a bus for an hour to come to work because there's no house around here that's less than $1 million, essentially.
That they can afford, right? Yeah. Shouldn't be that way. So.
Yeah. That's too many roommates.
That's right.
That's always fun, yeah.
Do you have a feel for a lot of reshoring activity that might have happened as a result of the pandemic?
A bit, yeah. We've had a few customers who've awarded us projects that have come from facilities that were overseas that they brought back here. Not from Asia, actually, ironically, but I think that I know it's happening. I'm not going to say it's in our face all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, often we don't know who we're bidding against for certain projects. But I know that, we've always felt, maybe partially because of our location in Windsor, that we're very intertwined with the U.S. and kind of see ourselves as sort of one big trading zone because stuff is going back and forth all the time.
Is that bridge done yet, by the way?
It's very close.
It's very. It was meters away last time I saw it. They have some
kind of like temporary cables connecting it, but they said they can't cross it yet. But it's right there. Yeah. It's
big fans
exciting.
of infrastructure here at the Fabricator Podcast.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the challenges for your company now? You'd mentioned, kind of in a macro point, but I think it kind of goes back to people. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, right. I mean, the best automation can do certain things, but it can't do certain things that people do really well.
Yeah.
And that always is going to be important, right? We need the creativity, we need the organization, we need the planning that people can bring to these projects, and trying to find those people is a challenge.
Do you hire based on a project that you're currently in the planning stages or are you kind of in feeding all the time?
Yeah, no, we kind of have the difficult combination of sort of a fixed labor force, because when you find someone who's got talent, you want to keep them, and you obviously want to offer them benefits and stability and all that type of thing. And then
and do you worry
try
about
to get the sales to
career path once they're inside?
Yeah,
and how do you take somebody from the street, which most manufacturers will take a good person and a good hard worker rather than somebody with a set of skills, and then develop them into their own employee?
And it's all just based on the individual, what they desire and what kind of effort they're willing to put in. We have a person right now who's a supervisor in our machining division who started deburring parts on the floor. Actually, I think he started as a janitor, and then he moved into the debur area.
It's
worked
only
really
up from
hard there.
there.
Yeah, and he kept with us, and he's relatively young, but now he's supervising a bunch of people, and he's a great employee, always has been, and really happy to see things like that. But then we have other situations where we've invested that training into people, and they've been scooped by the competition for $1 or more an hour, or lots, in some cases, a great deal more an hour, and that's difficult.
Life in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And what about the kind of the manager level up in terms of growing them as well?
Yeah. We're always looking for opportunities to get people to try things outside of their comfort zone, if you will, and to grow a little bit more. And so we've got people who are have done other roles and have moved into management roles within our company too.
Do people in your community have young people have an awareness of manufacturing? Are they not? Because oftentimes here in the States, not here in the States because we're in Canada right now, but you have this gap because people eliminated vocational programs in their school districts.
They don't know what's there. Yeah.
Did that happen to a degree in Windsor?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I believe it was through Kathleen in this group that I learned about Manufacturing Day.
Oh, okay.
And so I kind of took that back to our local economic development corporation and said, we're doing it. Why don't you guys see who else you can get involved? And then they got a sub-agency to sort of spearhead that. And it's been quite successful ever since. So
that's awesome.
It's nice when you open up your doors, right? And the most common comment we hear from both the guidance counselors and the students who come through is, wow, I didn't even know this was here. Wow, I didn't know you could do this.
And I say to manufacturers a lot is like, go outside and look at your building. And what does it say?
Yeah.
Does it say International Machining Corporation? That doesn't mean a lot, Sometimes it won't even say that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, or it won't even have a sign.
Yeah.
You need to create more than just a big gray building and people walk by and go, I wonder what they do in there.
Yeah. So that's an area we could probably improve our marketing too.
Curb appeal.
That's right.
It's going to be next hit show on HGTV.
Or
Industrial
put,
curb appeal.
Or put now hiring on your sign. You'd be surprised how many times that will work.
That's right. Yeah.
You what's your favorite part of the job?
The people, for sure. Yeah. I love just asking them what they're doing, learning about the challenges that they have, and hearing, what they did on the weekend or what they did for their birthday. I like to go around and wish people a happy birthday. And
wish I was a CEO.
It does make a difference.
It sounds nice.
I have no idea what Joe's birthday is.
What?
Sorry. We'll edit that out.
No, I use a calendar. Believe me, they're not all up here, but yeah, it's fun just to hear and to learn a little bit more. You know, we've had a lot of different type of events for families of our employees as well, and so you get to see their kids grow up and learn who's off at school and what they're doing and that kind of
what
stuff.
you're actually describing there is a very good corporate culture.
Yeah,
And
I
so
think
that's
so.
kind of,
Yeah.
is that how you
It's important
do-
to me. Yeah, I think, I own that to a certain extent, and I
you-
always want the floor to feel, during COVID, we obviously could have had all of our office staff work from home.
Yeah.
We opted not to. We have the space, but I said, what message does that send to the rest of the team if
Yeah.
we're working at home while they're here taking a risk or whatever, right? In the
Yeah.
early days when we didn't know how bad it was going to be. So we opted, thankfully we were allowed to under the provincial rules, but we opted to stay there.
Yeah.
Because I said there needs to be that clarity that we're all one team, right? It's not us versus them.
Right. That's yeah.
It's an
That
important
really
part
makes
of
a lot of
our
sense.
culture, yeah, because, as my dad said, they make the beans. We can count them all we want, but
Do you think of your dad when you make some decisions like that?
I do, yeah. There, have been times where, like the employee mentioned, I've made decisions that I don't think he would have necessarily made, which has been a big growth thing for me too, right? Because it's hard to. That's when I knew you've stepped into your role now because you've made a decision that he might not have agreed with, but. I do think of him a lot. Yeah.
You think what do you think he would think of the company now?
I think there would be parts of it he'd be really excited about. He always had a vision for our machine building group to become an automation division. So to see some of the amazing projects that these guys have put together, I think would make him really proud. And certainly to see how our machining division has really become a leader in machining these big engines.
Very precise.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Also large, which makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
In precision machining. It's some of the parts are rather unique, and maybe you're making one of them, or you're making a part family. I think his kind of tool and die maker self would be like, wonder how I would have made that.
Yeah.
It would have been done on 5 different machines over the course of 2 days, and not in a cycle time of 2.5 hours or something.
That's funny.
So we've definitely, built a lot on some really strong foundations that he built, both in the culture and in the infrastructure and the machines and everything. So
Awesome. Third generation close to getting involved?
I do have a nephew who's working in the business, and a few brother-in-laws, but most of them have charted their own paths that are outside of manufacturing, to be honest.
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I think your path is kind of indicative. Sometimes you wind up
You
back
never
where you didn't think
know,
you would,
right?
you would be.
That's right. Got to be open to things, right?
Yeah.
You never know.
Any advice for leaders like yourself who came at it not necessarily from the shop floor every day, but maybe kind of came at it from another angle, non-traditional?
I think really asking people questions and paying attention to their answers and where they're at in terms of their mindset is really important. That's part of why I walk around. I like to wish people a happy birthday, but I'm also observing because there's things that you learn by walking the floor that you
A Gemba walk. You're doing a Gemba walk without knowing it.
I guess. I'm not really well trained in that, but effectively, yeah. Someone looks down. Is that because something's going on that's not great at work, or is it something at home? And you have to be aware that it can be either. But just knowing that something's not working the way you expect it to, or you're surprised by something, is an important piece of information that you can never get if you're just sitting behind your computer. So.
Yeah. Plans for the future?
For me, or for the business? The business, I really want to see us be a leader in this sort of equipment to help builders really get more efficient and get faster, so we can get those things out there at a better cost for people and sooner. Solve the problem, if you will. And for me, I don't know. We'll see. I really
We'll see. When did your dad? What age was your dad when he retired?
Well, he actually got sick, unfortunately,
yeah.
and so that's how he ended up retiring. But he was 70, so it's
Oh wow.
we'll see. I the people keep me going. So
Yeah.
if that changes, then
I think manufacturing has a way of like
maybe I'll
pulling
look
you
for
back
something else.
in, right?
It does.
think you might get away.
Yeah, and there's you feel a little bit invincible. If you can survive in manufacturing and specifically automotive,
the company
it kind
has
of makes
seen
you feel like, you know what, I'm pretty tough.
downturns and
Yeah.
recessions and pandemics, and you're like, if we got through that, we are not stopping
Yeah.
now.
Exactly.
You made a comment in an interview, in the way you phrased it was, if you've worked in the automotive industry, I'm paraphrasing, you kind of have a feel of how to do it. Because I think most people have an intimidation factor, whereas they don't want to get involved. But is that relationship with your automotive customers changed over the years? It just seems like to me you're offering automated equipment kind of is indicative of them leaning on you, perhaps saying like, hey, we want you to figure this out, not necessarily our own engineers.
I mean, they have problems, right? I mean, I talked to one of our customers during COVID who said they were bringing in literally hundreds of potential employees to sit in their lunchroom and wait and see who showed up for a shift, because they had to produce parts to supply an automotive OEM. And he said, we didn't know on any given day during COVID how many people were going to come to work or not come to work.
Oh, wow.
So he said it wouldn't be uncommon to be paying these potential temps to sit in our lunchroom till noon. And then we knew kind of, okay, we got enough people, then we can send those people home. But he said we had to pay just in case, if you will. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys need some automation to help not be so dependent on a workforce that was not reliable. Now, admittedly, part of it was probably some of them were sick, but I don't know what the real reason was, but he said that was a real problem. So it's kind of a good feeling to know that you can help them with some of their own business issues. And, has the relationship changed? Yeah, I think that the commoditization that's happened in a lot of industries is also starting to happen in automation, just like it did, which is a bit unfortunate, but
that's actually
just
pretty
have to
interesting.
find the right partners, right?
Yeah, no, being able to offer something someone else can't is a pretty good business model. So that makes
Does that lead your typical customer? Do they come to you with a problem, or is there a relationship built over the years where you can say, hey, we know this is how you do something, and we can help you do it?
It's a combination.
Right.
So there's certain equipment that we've built for a long time, and we're kind of a bit of experts in it, if you will. But then that same customer has happened to be in the fuel tank world. So as you can imagine, that's not growing. So they were developing a new product to replace some of their fuel tank work. And they came to us and said, okay, let's partner together. We know you guys can help us figure this out.
And then how often are you like, we know this build is coming, and you're quoting against another facility?
Yeah, that happens too, unfortunately. Yeah, things like the punch and welds and stuff like that. There's a lot of companies that do it. So trying to find that place where you fit, probably like everybody in their life. Where's that career path? Where's that friend path, family path, whatever that's going to work for me. We have to do that in business too, right?
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, anything else you want to add?
No, I think
I
I've
appreciate you
spoken way
coming.
more than I usually do.
Yeah, no,
so
I appreciate the candid conversation. It's always exciting to speak with a business owner, particularly one that's been in the family. That's kind of a universal story people love to hear. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Joe, any questions?
I have no questions. Thanks, Diane.
Any viewers want to submit when Joe's birthday is? We'll give him a T-shirt.
We'll look it up on the internet.
Within 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, something like that.
You have 360 chances.
Yeah.
Ish.
All right. Any comments, Gareth?
No comments.
No comments. I'll wrap it up then. Thank you for joining us today on the Fabricator Podcast. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
And if you have any comments, criticisms, complaints,
Definitely those.
send them to podcast@fmamfg.org. Thank you and good day.
The Fabricator Podcast is a production of Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, located in Elgin, Illinois. The show is hosted by Dan Davis and the staff of FMA Communications. The podcast is produced by Gareth Slager and recorded and edited by Griffin Hammond and Dana Weicker. Sales support provided by Andy Flando. Additional production support by Elizabeth Gavin, Mike Owens, Billy Kolpa, Pat Simon, Brandon Geyer, and me, Sarah Spring. Email us at podcast@fmamfg.org. Thank you for listening.